He walked into the hearing room at 10 a.m. on January 22nd. Photographers were waiting. The room was full, and for the first time since his office was shut down, Jack Smith sat in front of a live camera and put his conclusions on the public record. What he said in the next 2 hours and 22 minutes has not received the attention it deserves. Let me walk you through what actually happened at that hearing, because the official story from both sides, Republicans saying Smith was decimated, Democrats saying history was made, misses the specific things Smith said under questioning that matter most. This is what the transcript shows. Smith opened by stating his position without qualification. He told the committee that the evidence established that Donald Trump willfully broke the law, the very laws he took an oath to uphold. He said the investigation developed proof beyond a reasonable doubt that Trump engaged in criminal activity. He said no one should be above the law in this country, and that the law required Trump to be held to account. Those are not hedged statements. Those are the conclusions of a career federal prosecutor who spent years inside the evidence, speaking on the record, under oath, to the United States Congress. Then came the question that produced the most significant exchange of the hearing. A Democratic member asked Smith directly, "Given everything that has happened since, the case is being dropped, the administration's pressure on the DOJ, the ongoing retribution campaign against investigators, if you were asked today to prosecute a former president on the same facts, would you do it again?" Smith did not pause. If asked whether to prosecute a former president based on the same facts, I would do so regardless of whether that president was a Republican or a Democrat. That sentence is now in the congressional record. But the part of Smith's testimony that drew less coverage was what he said about the Capitol attack itself and the structure of the conspiracy he investigated. Smith said the evidence made clear that Trump was, by a large measure, the most culpable and most responsible person in the conspiracy. He said the crimes were committed for Trump's benefit. He said the attack on the Capitol does not happen without him. He said the other co-conspirators were acting for Trump's benefit. That is not an allegation. That is the documented conclusion of a federal investigation that produced 2 separate indictments, reviewed evidence from hundreds of witnesses, and ran for more than 2 years. Smith also addressed the witnesses. He said some of the most powerful witnesses his team built the case around were fellow Republicans, people who had voted for Trump, campaigned for him, wanted him to win. He specifically mentioned Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State of Georgia, who told Trump the truth, told him things he did not want to hear, and put him on notice that what he was saying was false. That witness was not a political opponent. That witness was a Republican official who went on the record against a sitting president from his own party. Now here is where the hearing shifted into different territory. While Smith was testifying, Trump was on Air Force One returning from Davos, watching in real time. He posted during the hearing that Smith was being decimated. He called him a deranged animal who should not be allowed to practice law. He wrote that based on Smith's testimony, Smith should be prosecuted for his actions. A former special counsel is giving sworn testimony to Congress about his investigation into the president. While that testimony is in progress, the president is calling for that person to be criminally prosecuted. The president is not a private citizen. He is the head of the executive branch, whose Justice Department would handle any such prosecution. Smith addressed the broader context directly. He said that if we do not call people to account when they commit crimes in this context, it can endanger our election process, it can endanger election workers, and ultimately our democracy. He said threats against people like him were designed to intimidate public servants who stand up to power. The hearing split along predictable lines. Chairman Jim Jordan spent his opening statement arguing Smith's investigations were politically motivated from the start. Republican members repeatedly challenged Smith's independence and his record. Democratic members, including Eric Swalwell, told Smith he had nothing to be ashamed of and accused their Republican colleagues of knowing privately that Smith had done everything right while publicly attacking him for political cover. Swalwell said something that landed with unusual force in the room. He told the Republicans on the panel, "These guys are so lucky they're not under oath because they would have to tell you what they really think of Trump." He said, "They call him crooked. They call him cruel. They call him a scumbag. I've heard you all say it." No Republican member disputed that those conversations had taken place. None of them said Swalwell's characterization was inaccurate. The room moved on. There is a detail in the timeline worth noting. Just over an hour before Smith's December closed-door testimony, the Department of Justice sent an email to his lawyers blocking him from discussing the classified documents case. 65 minutes notice. The effect was that the December deposition focused almost entirely on the 2020 election case because the documents case was placed off-limits mid-process by the department. The DOJ that sent that email is the same DOJ now run by the administration Trump leads. The special counsel's investigation was shut down, citing DOJ policy preventing prosecution of a sitting president. The cases did not collapse on the evidence. They collapsed because Trump won an election before they could go to trial. Smith told the committee he was ready, willing, and able to go to trial in the case. That statement is in the transcript. The trial did not happen. The reason it did not happen is not in dispute. What remains in dispute is whether the evidence Smith describes as proof beyond a reasonable doubt will ever be tested in a courtroom. His conclusions are now in the congressional record, under oath, with his name attached. The hearing lasted 2 hours and 22 minutes. Trump called it decimation. Smith called it his duty. There is one more thing the hearing produced that has received almost no coverage. Smith was asked about the retribution campaign targeting members of his investigation. He did not minimize it. He described it as a pattern designed to send a message to anyone in law enforcement who might consider holding powerful people accountable in the future. The personal cost of doing so, he said, is now visible and documented. The investigators who worked on the January 6th case have faced public targeting, names published, addresses circulated, threats received. The DOJ under the current administration has dismissed charges against individuals convicted in connection with January 6th. The special counsel's office no longer exists. Smith sat in that room knowing all of that. He answered every question. He did not invoke privilege. He said what he found, what he concluded, and what he would do again. Republican members argued his investigation was the real threat to democracy. Smith argued the evidence was the evidence. Both positions are now in the congressional record. The evidence Smith says he developed, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, is still in federal storage. It has not been tested in court. It has not been refuted in court. The cases were not dismissed on the merits. They were dismissed because the man they concerned returned to the Oval Office before they could go to trial. What happens to that evidence and what it ultimately means for the legal record of this presidency is a question no one in that hearing room answered. Smith left the building at roughly 12:30 p.m. The question followed him out.